Song Talk Radio.
Welcome to Song Talk Radio, the show with songwriters talking to other songwriters about the craft of songwriting. We share tips, tools, and techniques, and together we become better at writing songs. I'm your host, Neil Boney, and with me, my co-host, Phil Emery. How are you doing, Phil?
I am doing quite well today. It's actually getting up into the 20s in St. John, so it's pretty nice.
Beautiful. Summer's finally arrived on the East Coast, eh? Great. And in the guest spot tonight, we're happy to have Americana rock and roll singer-songwriter Ryan Hahn. How are you doing, Ryan?
Doing very good. How y'all doing?
Doing great. Thanks for joining us tonight. And for our listeners, please send in your comments and questions to @SongTalk Radio on Facebook or Instagram, or feedback at songtalk.ca for the email, and we'll share your thoughts on the show. And please visit songtalk.ca to see the show post for this episode, to find links to resources we mention, and to download lyric and chord sheets to follow along with the songs that we feature. And before we get to the main event of the show, just another reminder about our songwriting challenge, which is coming up very, very soon. We have dropped it as of the last few months, and we're very happy to have received a few more of our listener songs. Thank you, everybody, for sending those in. And in case you don't know, the songwriting challenge for 2023 is to write a song in a mode that you're not familiar with, or an unusual mode. And of course, on the website, songtalk.ca, you'll see on the sidebar, Songwriting Challenge 2023. Hit that link and you will be taken to a web page where we've dropped a whole bunch of resources on there, some articles, some videos, some infographics, and as well the first episode we did about the modal challenge, where we went through with Jeff Allen Greenway, composer Jeff Allen Greenway, sort of dove deep on two modes with two example songs. So there's a lot of great material there. Give it a shot, and please send us at feedback at songtalk.ca. Send in your MP3. Send us a lyric sheet with the chords on them, because for this one especially, we do need the chords.
It does help.
And a little paragraph about your songwriting process, what you went through to arrive at the challenge answer. And we'll be sure to share the listener answers on a episode in the near future now.
Yeah. And it's actually, we've been getting some great submissions. They're really good.
Yeah, those are really strong songs.
We have very talented listeners.
Yeah, very cool. You all do that for your listeners too. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, we've done this the last 3 or 4 years now, and it's turned out to be a really amazing journey and a great learning experience.
Have you seen any of the listeners submit year after year, and like their improvement from listening to your podcasts and everything? And
well, they're kind of great upon the start. I mean,
that's good. That's good.
As usual. I mean, there's room for improvement. Even when we do our answers to the challenge, we acknowledge that there's room for improvement, right? And that's the other thing with the challenge, is that you can consider it a springboard. It's like the first draft of a song. You can think about it and then move it to another space that maybe no longer meets the parameters of the challenge, but still, it results in a great song, and that's all that counts at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's cool.
Ryan, have you done any modal writing on purpose?
Not on purpose. No. For me, I took some pretty minimal music theory classes when I was in high school and early college. Just kind of enough for me to know the fretboard and how to move around, and kind of have a good grasp on why I go to this chord before this chord or after this chord. But I try not to get too deep in the weeds on that kind of stuff. Most of my music follows more along the lines of the melodies that I'm trying to write. Keep it more a little simple, Tom Petty kind of school.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Tom Petty's a good person to emulate, though.
yeah, not bad.
Yeah, can't go wrong there for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, and you've had a little discovery today, Phil. You want to tell the listeners about that?
Yes. A friend of the show, Sharon, sent me a message about the Songwriters Hall of Fame. We were texting back and forth about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but there's something called the Songwriters Hall of Fame, and I don't think it's an actual building. But their mission is their ongoing mission is to celebrate and honor the contributions and legacies of songwriters of all genres of music while developing and nurturing the next generation of songwriters through master sessions, songwriting, craft forums, scholarships, and digital initiatives. So they actually do give scholarships every year. I'm not sure exactly what that is. But it's at songhall.org. And I literally just looked at it before the show. And, the chairman of the board is Nile Rodgers. So, definitely got some real talent there. So it's interesting. So check it out, songhall.org, and you can join. I'm not sure what you... Oh, it's $25 a year. I'm not sure what you get for that, but it's cheap, though. Yeah, I mean, there's the Songwriters Association of Canada, but I think this is sort of a different kind of thing. Right. Anyways, interesting stuff. There's so many songwriter things and resources out there that there's enough for everybody, I think.
Yeah, including our meetup.
Yes. Oh, that's right. When's that meetup coming, Neil?
I believe the next one, I should know because I'm hosting it at the Transac in downtown Toronto. I think it's next Tuesday, July 18th. It's that one's live, or in person rather, at the Transac in Toronto, which is where we used to hold it in the before times. Nowadays we do the meetup 1 month at the Transac, 1 month online, because through the pandemic, we managed to connect with groups from Minnesota, groups from Seattle, songwriters from literally all over the world. Australia. And we didn't want to let go of that. So we do hold on to the online version of the meetup. And and that's how we do that. And it's a great place to meet other songwriters and start collaborations and all sorts of stuff. That's how Phil and I met so many years ago, and that's where the show was born, through the meetup.
Neil was the first person I talked to at the meetup,
and the last, and the only.
Okay.
I didn't allow you to talk to anyone else. All right. We jest. Okie dokie. All right, moving on. And now you're talking to Ryan. What the heck is going on here? Okay. All right. Tonight we are happy to speak to Ryan Hahn about his new song, Little Town. And here's a little taste of his song.
In a tiny courthouse where everybody knows everyone. Nobody is a stranger, but they all got a gun. Oh, that's where I come from, the hills of Kentucky in the sun. The hills of Kentucky in the southern sun.
From the bourbon hills of Kentucky to the streets of Los Angeles, Americana rock and roll band Ryan Hahn and the Believers craft honest, insightful stories rooted in Americana, roots, and Southern rock and roll. With their dynamic sound, Ryan and his Believers harken back to the sounds of Steve Earle and Tom Petty, telling stories of fleeing small-town America for the big city and the struggles and joys in between. Welcome to Song Talk Radio, Ryan Hahn.
What's up, y'all?
Great to have you on the show. So tell us, your song on first listen seems really mature. That's one way you can describe it, and really like high attention to details. How long have you been writing songs? Because it seems like you've been doing it a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I started playing guitar when I was 13, 14 years old, and pretty much immediately, a lot of my friends who were playing were sitting learning Metallica solos or, trying to play like Stevie Ray Vaughan. And for me, I just wanted to learn Heart of Gold by Neil Young, For me, my big thing was I wanted to play guitar so that I could learn to write songs. So I pretty much started immediately. My guitar teacher, after lessons for like 3 months, had me join his band, and we, they were an original music band. So I've been writing songs for, over 20 years now, on different levels and through different genres. And, since I've been in Los Angeles, wrote, got the opportunity to write with a lot of amazing people too. So, songwriting is definitely something that I've been honing for a very long time.
Cool.
So you get a chance to do a lot of co-writing then?
I definitely do. Yeah. For a lot of my music, depending on kind of the story, I prefer to kind of internalize it and kind of work on it on my own. But I love, one of my favorite things is helping other artists kind of bring their songs to life, and trying to help them get their ideas out of the head that they can't quite get out of their head. Co-writing is super fun, but I like it the most when I'm kind of helping someone get to somewhere that they don't know how to get to.
Cool. Oh, very cool. Have you ever gone down to Nashville and done their co-writing system?
I've not spent a lot of time. I mean, I've been to Nashville a whole lot. I was actually just down there like a month ago. I'll be back in September for Americana Fest. But I've not really gone down there, to work on the writing process and stuff. It's, it's a hard egg to crack down there. So, you've got to kind of set aside a long period of time to sort of get there and maneuver and get your foot in the right doors. And, I've got so much going on here in Los Angeles. I just feel like I don't necessarily have the time that I needs to be invested in, getting through all the walls and the challenges, of Nashville.
And your song, at least with the song that you shared with us, Little Town, is very much steeped in the place of Kentucky and Kentucky mountains and a little town there. You said you recently moved to Los Angeles, or you've been there some time?
I've been in Los Angeles for 18 years.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I'm from a super small town. When I was young, town of like 5,000 people. It's doubled now. It's at least 10,000 there now, which is still small. But for us, it seems like it's too many people there now. Super small town though, in Kentucky, in the middle of the Bible Belt. Raised on a tobacco and beef cattle farm when I was a kid. So yeah, about that.
How does that actually change your approach to songwriting, especially when you're writing these kinds of songs that are steeped in time and place? How does that change moving from rural Kentucky to metropolitan Los Angeles?
I mean, it's I was a little lucky. When I was 17, I was in a Christian rock band that we actually got signed to a record label, had some songs on Christian radio, and got some really, really great tours. We played like 150 shows in 2004. And it took me out, we spent some time in Los Angeles, touring through California, all over the country. So I at least got a little bit of a taste of what, what the big city was like. But, moving out here from Kentucky in a U-Haul trailer in my 98 Ford Ranger was, definitely a jarring experience. First time on my own, having to pay rent and, make new friends, and was in a whole new place, But for me, just the excitement of it all and being in this new place overshadowed any of the challenges or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
Has your songwriting process changed since you first got there 18 years ago?
I think so. Just simply for being out here 18 years. I moved here when I was 20, when I was, pretty young and not as experienced in life and in music. And then, through my 20s, I did a lot of hired work playing guitar, playing for punk rock bands, played in some metal bands, played in like an amazing 8-piece R&B funk group that was, they taught me everything about the pocket,
Mm-hmm.
So I really put myself in a lot of different scenarios. I did a lot of session work, so I was doing tons of different genres all over the place, working with different songwriters, different musicians. And I think, my 20s really was like putting my skill set through the fire, and really ironing it out. That informed everything that make me the songwriter that I became, towards my end of my 20s. It experienced so much that the ideas in my head, I was very clear on how I needed to express them. If I had a certain feeling that I wanted to evoke in a song, I'd had enough experience to kind of know the tricks, whether it's a chord or a production trick or how you use your vocal, how to kind of make that happen, So definitely my songwriting changed 180% from when I first moved to Los Angeles. There's so many talented people out here, and I was lucky enough to get thrown into some studios and some bands with some of them and was able to just be a sponge and soak all of it in that I could.
Very nice.
Given that kind of enormous diversity of experience, like how do you decide where you're going to, or do you decide that you're going to be specific about your particular angle on the style? I'm hesitant to say genre, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, what
bucket do you put yourself in?
Or my perspective, or
yeah.
I mean, for me, it's I've always wanted to do my own thing. I'd always been in bands with other people, and I always wanted to do my thing. But it took me a while of a couple of the first songs I wrote for Ryan Hahn and the Believers, I probably wrote when I was 22 or 23, but I didn't necessarily know how I got there or what that meant as far as a genre or kind of like what I'm going to do with my music. But through all those years in my 20s, I sort of gradually, kind of when I would sit down to just write for myself, gradually started just getting into this space that it's like, oh, the last 4 or 5 songs I've written have all like really made sense together, and they all have this certain perspective and this certain thing that they're doing. It really grew very organically. My music is very much the music that I grew up on, and the things that I liked. I've never tried to say I'm going to be in a Americana band or a rock and roll band or this or that. For me, it's just, I'm going to pull on my influences that were from, like we said, Steve Earle, Tom Petty, to Alice in Chains, to, bands like Nickel Creek, just writing what I write. And it just happens that seems like they all kind of at least have somewhat of a cohesive thread through them.
In this, in the genre that you work in, story songs are a big thing. Now, do you write a lot of your songs from like the I perspective, or do you do ever third person story songs?
I definitely do some third person story songs. I have a song off of my first record that I released. The record was called Farmer's Son, but the song is called Dead Man's Mine. And it's all about this guy who's got a wife and a daughter who works in the coal mines, and there's a collapse in the mines, and he gets stuck with 10 guys inside of there. And it goes through, second verse goes to his wife's perspective, waiting for him, hadn't gotten a call, doesn't know where he is. And then goes into like, he's the only one that ends up surviving from this. And, as he's digging himself out of the hole, he sees his wife and his kid waiting for him outside, So I have several songs where I write from third person, outside perspective, but, write a lot from my own experiences. Like Little Town, the song that you all played is 100% autobiographical. That's literally describing my town of Lawrenceburg, the little courthouse, the 2 stoplights. So I try to kind of balance those 2 worlds. But as long as there's a story, there has to be a story always.
So typically, if it comes from personal experience, it's an I perspective, and if you're writing about a character who's not you, then that tends to be third person, or not necessarily.
Not necessarily. But but like I say, it's always the one consistent thing is I'm always trying to tell a story. If I'm talking about an emotion in a song, it's all told in the form of a story. And that definitely comes from growing up listening to all the country music that I did, where I come from. Story is king always to me.
What's your process? Are you sort of a music first person, lyrics first person, or combination thereof?
I'm definitely 90% of the time I'm a music first person. At minimum, the general chord progression, whether it's maybe just the verse chord progression. But I like sort of building out a little bit of a canvas for myself, at least, because that's what's for me sparks the energy or what it's making me feel. So I like to kind of come up with my chord progression and just sort of sit and play it until I start getting that picture in my head or start feeling a certain emotion. And then that sort of leads me into what I'm going to write about. Then I do have like, little lines or things that I've written that I have, in my notes app that once I get that feeling, I might go back to some lyrical ideas that I had in the past that, makes me think might work with this chord progression or what I'm doing. But for me, it definitely usually starts with the music, 'cause that's what sets the feeling of what I'm trying to get across.
When you write your melodies, there's always lyrics attached, or do you write like dummy lyrics or just la la la's or anything like that?
Most of the time, definitely, I might have like a couple words here or there, but yeah, mostly it's just mumbles on my voice memo of it. And then kind of go through and write the story and then sort of attach those to the syllables that I'm doing or whatever.
That's what
I like to get the feeling and everything and the picture of what we're trying, the general vibe of what we're trying to do, because that informs to me what the lyrics are supposed to say so much. Because it all has to kind of make sense, together.
The structure of the song is like it's an interesting structure. It's not like the classic verse chorus middle chorus end type thing.
Yeah.
Do you sort of explore the structures of songs, or you sort of go where it feels?
I definitely explored the structures of the songs. On occasion, I'll make a choice on purpose. You might say, hey, I want the bridge after the second verse, so we're not even going to go to the chorus. But a lot of the times, for me, it's lyrics and melody will sort of determine where I'm going to go with things. This song, specifically Little Town, I purposely wanted to write a progression that was very cyclical, that you could get lost in and sort of forget where the one is. To where you sort of just lose all sense, and it's kind of has this hypnotic sort of thing that happens. So that's why, the verse is just basically just A minor, a D, and a C, and then you reverse that, A minor, C, D, and it just keeps going back and forth like that. And eventually you sort of get lost in that, where you forget. And it's a pain in the butt for my band a lot of the times because it is like so easy after you do it a few times to just sort of forget, wait, was that the part where I was supposed to do the deep?
Yeah. And you spend the rest of the song chasing it, but you're always off the hits. Yeah, it's true.
Exactly.
I know that.
And then, so that was very much on purpose, because I wanted, for this song, it's very much about the lyrics, and I didn't really want any of the music or anything like that to take away from that. I wanted you to sort of the music almost to disappear, and all you hear is what I'm saying. And then it's got the weird little section on the song that was literally just based off of my vocal accent from my melody, is the little weird bar of 6 that I have in there, where the accent is actually hitting on the 2, which a lot of people, you might call that the chorus section. I just call it a B section. But that was just this whole sort of thing where I just knew I wanted a change hitting on that vocal part, even though that we were already partially into the next measure. So that was like a weird thing. And that's another thing that my drummers always hate me for. Because you can tell when that part's coming, because you've gotten lost before, but so that's one of those musical decisions that I made, specifically based on, I wanted that vocal line to hit really hard. So I knew that a change had to come at that moment.
Yeah, those are really insightful. In fact, they are tips, because I feel like those are two things you mentioned there are things that I did not know when I started songwriting. Number one, to let the story dictate what the structure may or may not be, right? And sort of have a synergy between those two things. And then number two, just more of a recent discovery for me is, and we've talked about this a number of times recently with other guests, about this idea of between simplicity and complexity, right? If you want your listener to focus on the lyrics and dead simple music, 3 chords and the truth, right? And because if you introduce, a lot of complexities in the chord choices, modulations, and all that sort of stuff, and strange melodies and things like that, you're going to detract from the lyric, because then people are like, oh, that was an interesting melodic twist. Oh, what is he singing about again? Oh, I lost that.
It's like
Whatever, right?
A movie giving a monologue while there's like a bunch of extras screaming at the top of their lungs in the background.
Exactly. Things exploding and
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the aliens are coming down. I'm trying to do a monologue here.
But then, to me, there's also, for me, I try to, like this song, for instance, is literally 3 chords and different structures. But it's got these little weird moments in it. So for me, one of my big things is not to always bring up Tom Petty, but one of the things I love about Tom Petty is his songs, if you just look at the chords on a sheet, it's so simple. There's 4 to 6 chords at most, for the most part, and simple voicings of the chords. There's not like anything strange or weird for the most part happening. But then all these like little weird accents or little weird extra 3 bars on a tag or something. He makes the canvas really simple, but then in the little details is where he gets in the weeds. And for me, like if you keep your chords simple, it lets your story breathe. And then what you do is you have fun with all the little structure pieces. And when you're hitting the accents and those types of things, and that's why for my band, my songs a lot of the times will come across as like, oh, it's just like a 4-chord song. But then there's all kinds of little stops or little weird extra pieces or something, So I love the challenge of taking a simple song, but then try to make it something clever as well, that's not just it's not just something that some dudes can jump up on stage and jam with you without having heard it, the time.
And that's really that kind of attention to detail is the difference between a simple song and a simplistic song.
Yeah.
Right. Simple song, good. Simplistic song, meh. Not so much.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Why don't we listen to the whole song and we can appreciate the structure of this, the story of it, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more.
Awesome.
Stoplights in a tiny courthouse where everybody knows everyone. Nobody is a stranger, but they all got a gun. Now that's where I come from, the hills of Kentucky in the sun. The hills of Kentucky in the southern sun. Town. I don't know much, but I wanna get out. If you ain't a God-fearing son of a gun, then church folks will get you before God does. Now that's where I come from, the hills of Kentucky and the southern sun. The hills of Kentucky and the southern sun. for his rights to own a man of color. All these Confederate sons don't know what they want, just know what they don't want. What happened to a mighty old town with them two stoplights and the tiny courthouse where nobody loves no one, only care about themselves, only care about their guns. And I don't need no man made of stone. Yeah, that's where I come from, the hills of Kentucky and the southern sun. That's where I come from, the hills of Kentucky and the southern sun. That's where I come from, the hills of Kentucky and the southern sun. The southern sun.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Just great. Just great. Phil,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
Well, it's an interesting song because it doesn't have like a standard rhyme scheme. You know, it's each line is sort of it's kind of on. You're like everyone and gun. I guess that's kind of it, but it even where it hits doesn't. It's not real standard rhyme schemes. I like the solo because it's, music doesn't have a lot of solos anymore. So I really appreciate when there's solos again. And I know people want to get rid of it because of, getting on TikTok or something, but I really appreciated that. And it's, because that's where I come from is obviously a chorus of sorts. It's a B part, but I think it's sort of the chorus. And the way you hit the line, the Southern Sun, is really interesting because it's not obvious. Mm-hmm. And at first it's a bit jarring, but then it becomes a bit of an earworm, because there's not a lot of those kind of musical pop, kind of hooks in it. But the way you hit that Southern Sun does become the hook. Mm-hmm. And it's always tough to know, where to go for something that kind of fits in your particular genre and where to push against it. And that pushing against it is often the thing that sort of stands out, Yeah. Like, the Who doing the stuttering, amphetamine based stuttering. That was sort of off the time, but that became the hook. You know, and it's a wonderful way of exploring hooks, as opposed to the way that I think most songwriters will, myself included, kind of look for hooks. What do you think, Neil?
Yeah, I love the song from top to bottom. I think it's really interesting how, the Southern Sun part, because your natural inclination would be just to let it Southern Sun, just let it land the way it's going to land. But you go Southern Sun and then have that little beat in between. But you don't always do it that way. I think once or twice you just do Southern Sun, and you're listening to it, it becomes almost a game. It's like, is it going to do it this way? Or is it going to do it that way? and it's really cool. And that kind of the kind of approach to the rhythmic complexity, the rhythmic difference, or sort of making it stand out, like Phil was just saying. Like, you especially play with it in your second verse too, right? I don't know much, but I want to get out if you ain't. I forget where the breaks are in the melody, but they don't fall naturally where the language would want them to fall. You put the breaks rhythmically in a different place, which is really, really cool, and it gives that verse some momentum and really makes it interesting. I
think lyrically or phrasing wise, I like to play a lot with like the syncopation and like how the words hit and all of that. I think that's another cool way where you can make things not just just normal and sort of stock, So I love playing around with, little breaks before the words, or, just making the phrasing very much a part of the rhythm of what's happening in the music,
And speaking of rhymes, there's, like you say, Phil, there's been unexpected rhymes, but there's a lot of like similar sounding end words. So you got gun, you got before God does, that's similar, and then all these Confederate sons. Yeah. It's a different sons, and then God-fearing son of a gun. That's a different gun, and it's like all these things pop up in it that give the kind of consistency throughout, which is really a clever use of language, but it's also pretty cool. And then you got those one-line C sections, like after the chorus, and then after the chorus the first time, and then before the chorus the second time, that I don't recognize my own home. It's a slightly different chord progression there. And it's where you got that little 2/4 bar that throws everybody off. Because it does feel kind of ethereal in that moment. It's just like we're just hanging with it, and then the beat kind of comes back in. But those are really interesting. That's another section. And I'm wondering where the idea for those came from. Like, was it something that came after you wrote the rest of the song, or was it something there from the beginning? Or
well, so it was mostly that extra, 2/4 is there because I wanted the end of the beat to hit on that certain word, on that last word of that line. But then I had to figure out what the hell I was going to do after I did that.
Get out of it, yeah.
So that's kind of where that little next section sort of came in. But I also needed, I didn't want it to just be like a classic, 3-verse song with kind of nothing in the middle. So those 2 lines lyrically are sort of almost kind of summing up what I'm feeling between those verses, So it ended up, for one, musically, it sort of finished off and helped give some context as to why I did those extra 2 bars. And then lyrically, I was able to sort of tie in what I had said previously in there too. So it's sort of like a little tiny section that's explaining a little bit what you just heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really effective, especially lyrically, I think. Yeah.
I just needed that to kind of tie everything together,
Yeah, absolutely, it does that.
This actually brought up an interesting point that I've talked with friends about is, as songwriters, sometimes we want to say really positive things like "I love you" and that kind of thing, and then there's times when we want to be critical, and I think this song is a bit critical of your hometown.
It's a protest song.
Well, it's always an interesting approach about how. It's an interesting thing to think about how we approach the protest song. Do we write it in metaphor? Do we take it apart? Do we take it a step up outside of ourselves? Or do we write really direct? Like, this seems like a very direct head front approach to this town.
And for me, one of the, because this is not an easy song for me to write. I love where I come from. I love my town. I love the people from there. But, through some of the things that were happening back in 2020 and basically the last few years, I had just seen some things going on there that I just had major problems with, and wanted to figure out a way to express that feeling. And so I had to be very careful for myself when writing this, because I wanted it to still show I'm proud of where I'm coming from. I'm at the top of my lungs. I'm a Kentucky boy from Lawrenceburg, Kentucky, and I am thankful of where I came from. I'm thankful of the way that I was raised, but I have some major issues with certain things. So this song was, a challenge to kind of balance. And I didn't want to be, beat around the bush. I didn't want to, I wanted to be very, very blunt with it. But trying to be a little bit sensitive as well. I don't know how well I did with that. But it was a challenge trying to figure out a way to not completely scold where I come from, and to say it in a way that, sparks some conversation maybe. And and if it jars somebody, then maybe it was supposed to jar that person, you know. I just wanted to try and write this with kind of out any fear and just be like, I'm going to say my piece and not worry about, you know, offending anybody, and, you know, just try to be as honest as I could with it.
I think the balance is there in terms of here. I mean, the opening verse, not critical at all. You know, maybe, but they all got a gun. Right? Everyone knows everyone. Nobody's a stranger. Sounds like a wonderful little town, right? And then it's only in the second verse where you start getting critical of organized religion, and that was kind of, you know, that was sort of revolved around the time when I was trying to decide to leave and move out to Los Angeles, you know. And then third verse jumps into kind of like where I see it's came since then. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, but the way you cap off the end of the third verse, which harkens back to the first verse, which harkens back to your other middle section, I don't recognize my own home. And you revisit, you know, the nice little town. What happened to my nice little town? It's changed, right? But I will admit, you know, I really, really like the verse that's critical about religion. I really, really like the verse that's critical about the Confederate sons. I think those are your strongest points of the song. The nice parts, they're nice. Okay, fine.
It was a setup, you know.
It was a setup. It was just a setup for the other stuff, right? It's like with
the right hook right away. You know? Exactly.
I mean, and it is because of that, because they hit harder, right? That's where the truth really comes out, right?
Yeah, and then that's why, you know, on that last verse, why I stripped out everything, and it just goes back to the one hitters on the guitar, because that's, you know, that third verse hits, you know, kind of on another level. I didn't want anything taken away from that. I wanted that to just be like, you can't ignore what I'm saying right here.
But overall, I think the balance is there between, you know, it's not critical as in finger wagging, but it's like, I don't like where this has gone. I miss the old days, like the way it used to be, kind of thing, right?
And that's a hard line to walk, you know, to be because some protest songs they come from a good place, but they get very tiring because nobody wants, you know, to be lectured at, no matter what side you're on. Yeah. So it's always an interesting question about how metaphorical and how direct to get. And
I think Bruce Springsteen did it, I think, better than anyone. You know, even better. You know, Mellencamp was great too, but I feel like Springsteen is the type of guy who, like, 90% of people who listen to his songs don't realize he wrote a protest song there.
Well, but is that a bit of a danger though? Like, if you're trying to get across a message, but you're so soft with it that the message gets lost, and then it's just a beautiful song, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess whatever, that, you know, that depends on your intentions with your music, right? You know. Yeah. You know, somebody like Chris Christopherson wouldn't want it that. He would want to offend people, and he would want it to get out there. But Bruce Springsteen, he might want to be a little bit softer. He you know, might like his nice motorcycles and his nice cars and his, you know, 60,000 people arenas, you know.
Yeah. We had a guest. I remember Phil, Anna Larson. She's from Austin, Texas, piano player, singer songwriter. And she brought on a song that was an anti-gun song. You'd never know it because it was such a soft hitting song. You know, but it was a protest song. But I think the difference too is that, like, the diehard Bruce Springsteen fans, they know, right? Because they've looked into it deeper, right? And that's rewarding for them, and sets them apart from the casual fans.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like all these, you know, I just thought the soft protest songs also present some pretty funny moments, you know, when you've got like Donald Trump using songs at his rallies. And the lyrics are completely against what he believes in.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, those moments are beautiful to me. I love it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, the best people. What can you say?
Oh yeah. So I'm curious, Ryan, how much editing? The other thing about this song too, it occurred to me too, is that, like, you got the long instrumental sections, which are great, and it fills up short. You don't hear that much anymore. And but you could have put I'm sure you could have put a whole whack of stuff in here. How did you whittle that down? I'm assuming you had a lot of thoughts. How did you distill it into just these three different things.
I mean, this one was really, so before we went into the studio, I actually did so every once in a while, most of the time when I do shows, we got like the big full like rock band thing. But the last couple of years I've been doing little shows here and there, with a string band. So like upright bass, fiddle, mandolin, sort of that thing. Before I went into the studio and started recording Little Town, I was doing that song with the string band version, and that it hit so much harder than when we were doing it with kind of the full band. So that sort of informed immediately kind of the pieces that I wanted for this. And that the more intimate sort of feel and less colors and things as far as instruments and stuff going on.
I'm actually talking just about the story, just about the storytelling. Like there must have been other aspects of the small town you wanted to explore.
This one, I wrote the lyrics in this one in probably an hour and a half.
Okay.
This one was very much just like hit that the first couple lines of the verse, and everything just sort of came out. I knew exactly what I wanted to say.
Okay.
That does not always happen. This was one of those super lucky moments when I didn't have to, sit with something for a month or come back to it 2 months later or something. This one, like I said, trying to be as honest as I could. I didn't want to overthink this one. I just wanted to, because this all, happened after a specific moment, and I really wanted to bottle everything I was feeling at that time. So I tried to just sit with it and just get it done. So this one came pretty easy.
Amazing.
Very nice. So what is coming up next for you?
Well, next, I guess the next big thing is we're playing Americana Fest down in Nashville, in September. We've got a bunch of shows in Los Angeles happening over the next couple months as well. But the next kind of big thing will be, Americana Fest in September, kind of outside of the shows that we're doing. The record that Little Town is on, speaking of the string band thing, I got my string band group together and we went in and picked 4 songs off of the new EP and did them live with the string band. So probably next spring, I'm getting ready to go into mixing and stuff on that. Gonna try and release a split vinyl where it'll have like 4 songs from the EP, the rock and roll EP, and then on the other side will be those 4 songs as the string band version. So you'll have like the rock side and then the bluegrass kind of side.
That's really cool.
So that's, those are kind of the big things that we're, focusing on now. Like I say, just playing as many shows as we can and writing as often as I can.
Right on. Okay, I think that is about all the time we have on Song Talk Radio. Special thanks to Ryan Hahn. And where can our listeners hear more of your music? Where should we send our people?
You can look up Ryan Hahn and the Believers on Spotify, Apple Music, all that stuff. Instagram, Facebook, Ryan Hahn and the Believers. You just search that wherever you're at and you'll find something.
And we will certainly put links to that from the show post for this episode. And we want to hear from you, our listeners, so please send your comments on Facebook or Instagram to @SongTalkRadio, or send us an email, feedback@songtalk.ca. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel for live performance videos, full episodes, and subscribe today to the Song Talk Radio podcast on your favorite podcast provider. You can find links to all the products, books, and web services we mentioned on the show on our resources page on the website. And please join us at our next monthly Song Talk meetup. Whether you're in Toronto for our in-person meetups or anywhere in the world for our online meetups, it's free to join on meetup.com and free to attend. Bring a song and a lyric sheet and get constructive feedback from other songwriters. Stop by songtalk.ca for the link. You can follow me at neilmodi.com. You can follow Phil.
PhilEmery.ca.
And Ryan, what's Ryan Hahn and the Believers' go-to social media channel?
Instagram probably would be the main one that we're on.
Alrighty, be sure to see them there. Thanks for listening, everyone. Be sure to stop by the website songtalk.ca to browse past shows and find out how you can be a guest. Thanks for tuning in, and keep on writing.
Hey, we did it that time.
Sort of.